The funniest part about her is she lives in a mental institution.
Hi guys, and welcome to iHardly, the internet web show where I hardly know what I'm doing. We're back here in the princess room, and I've got camo on, so if I'm in danger, I can just stand up against the wall and just, kind of blend in. No, I'm just kidding. It's springtime, so I'm just being festive. Y'all should look it up, and I just coincidentally happen to match the colors of the princess room. We have such a cool show in store for you guys today. Mrs. Tiffany Perry is here. She's an art teacher at the high school that I graduated from, and she's just such a joy to speak with. And we have a new segment called iTry, where today I'll be trying comedy. And then we have another segment of yArtistry, the segment where we ask artists why they made it the way they did. And that's called a transition, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to iTry, the segment where I try new things, really in the true, fruitful spirit of iHardly. This mic isn't plugged into anything, and that's not for comedic relief. It's a prop. This is some comedy that I wrote that I'll try to deliver humorously, but I've literally never done this. It's actually on my bucket list to try comedy in front of a live audience someday. This is the first step, is doing it in front of a camera and then posting it on the internet to see if other people think it's funny. Okay, so I had originally recorded some scripted comedy that I had written out, and after showing it to a few people, realized it was super ultra cringy, and they recommended that I insert this next video, which is not something I wrote. It came from my mind, but the events you're about to witness actually happened to me. I do apologize for the lack of clothing that I will be wearing, as well as any words that I might say or actions that I might do. But this is a true story, and what you're about to witness did actually happen to me. Enjoy.
So this snaps for Andy Fiorita. Andy, remember that time in college where I freaked out? I may have lost a little bit of my manhood because a cockroach walked into one of my flannels. Walked in the pocket, actually. And it was late at night, kind of like tonight. And I said, Andy, help me find the cockroach. And you said, I'm not your dad. Andy, this story's for you. I'm an adult now, not a father yet. But you know what's worse than losing a cockroach in your flannel? Losing a snake in your home. It's going to be a long night. Let's have a history lesson, shall we? Do you know why it bothers me that there's a snake in my home? Because snakes are never good. You want some proof? You want some examples? Oh, I don't know. How about the Bible? Yeah. Evil? Satan? Remember that time there was a snake? Yeah. The reason there's a snake loose in my house right now is because of that. The fall? Yeah, that happened. Guess what? Ricky Tiki Tavi? Ever read that book? You know one? About the mongoose? Guess what? He fought off a snake. Guess what I ain't got? A mongoose. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, you haven't seen it, and you don't know where it's at. How do you know there's a snake loose in your home? Snakes do this thing where they have to get rid of their former soul and leave it in the walls. And that's a snake skin, because snakes do that. Furthermore, it doesn't bother me that there is a snake in the house. That would actually be whatever. It bothers me that there's a snake in the house and I don't know where it's at. Just a brief update. I've been walking around my home shirtless with a machete and a flashlight for the better part of 4 hours. I don't think we're going to catch him tonight, boys. Next time. This one slithered right out of our fingers. And for everyone wondering why I'm shirtless, and for no one wondering why I'm shirtless, I wouldn't really expect you to understand, but you can't snake hunt with a shirt on. It's a rule. I didn't make it, but if you're from Eastern Kentucky, once you start snake hunting, it just, you know the rules. And the first thing I did when I saw the snake skin in my house was well, gotta take my shirt off. So here I am. Also, just a public service announcement. Please refrain from using sticky traps to catch snakes. It's so completely inhumane. Also, if it's hot outside, bring them inside. If you're cold, they're cold.
My skin was oxygen. I could not identify the body of snakes. Evolve is what snakes do. I could not identify the body. Shed the bone and leave the womb.
Thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate you being a part of this journey. If you get what I was saying with that last song, I didn't find it. It's 6:45 a.m. I'm still shirtless. I'm finally in bed. I think I lost this one. Yeah, you can't win them every time or any time. Um, Good night.
Hey guys, welcome to the segment of iHardly Knower, which segment where we get to know people more. Last week you saw that I had Nick and Heather Sherman on, some great friends of mine, and Nick gave me a piece of advice last week. He said, for your next guest, make sure it's someone that you can learn from. And I thought there was no better person to learn from than my former art teacher, Tiffany Perry. Tiffany, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Such a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
First question I have for you today is, who were your artistic inspirations growing up?
I had a few relatives. My maternal great-grandmother, she was an artist, and she would always be painting. And I don't know why exactly, but she was really intrigued by Native Americans. So she always was painting Native Americans. And I remember that as a child, and she would do some drawings. Then my paternal grandmother, she was always doing something crafting, or we would go over to her house as a kid. I remember she would have like aluminum foil laid out, and she would give us toothpicks to draw on it, and it would kind of give an embossed look. So I always thought that was fun. Growing up into my teenage years, I really started to discover Helen Frankenthaler and Egon Schiele, and I realized how beautiful their works were as far as not being traditional. They're works of art that you don't see every day. People don't display works that are non-figurative and abstract in their home a lot. A lot of people like the realism aspect, and that's when I kind of realized I didn't, and that was okay.
I actually never knew any of that, so that's something you go over with your students?
I don't necessarily go over that at the beginning. I tend to go over different artists, and I relate different assignments to different artists and different time periods and why it's important. Then once they get to the more advanced art lessons, the art lessons that deal with abstract thinking or non-figurative works, I will tell them, this is my favorite type of art, non-figurative. And they're like, why? It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing there. What I usually tell them is, it's not because there's nothing there or that there's no object or subject. It's because it invokes a feeling of happiness in me. It's something that no one can ever replicate or do again. That's what makes it special.
You still have your original inspirations, but do you have any new ones, or have any of them changed since you've gotten older, or like been a professional in the field?
Yes. Kasama Yayoi, I probably just butchered her name. She is a Japanese contemporary artist who mainly works in sculpture and installation, but her work is basically forms, walls, clothing. It's just color and dots. It's really minimalist. I appreciate minimalism, both lifestyle minimalism as well as artistic minimalism. More so, just love the way that she puts color on the certain objects or the certain walls. It means something to her. You would notice her art if you saw it. For example, like pumpkins, she'll just paint polka dots, like black polka dots. It seems really simple, but for some reason it just really captures me. And I think it's because of the form she places it on and the way that she does the dots to contour the objects. I just think it's special, and so she's really inspirational to me. The funniest part about her is she lives in a mental institution, but she chooses to live there. Like, she put herself there. She's just a really unique person. Displays that through her art.
I think that's what my future is going to entail as well. As I'm going to myself to a mental institution. Talking to Nick and Heather about this last week. Tell me if you agree or disagree with this. As artists, there is a certain like unspoken demeanor about us. You have to be a fellow artist to kind of understand. Argument can be made, is not everyone an artist, or is everyone an artist?
I think everybody has the capability of being a trained artist. Like, you can be trained to do things. You can be trained to draw portraits. You can be trained to play music or sing music. But I think that when we're born, we're all given gifts. Those who are meant to be artists are meant to express themselves in an artistic manner, whether it be through music, writing, visual arts. I think that we understand each other better than those who are blessed with the ability to solve formulas or are business minded. So yeah, I do think that's the case.
I would agree with you. So was there ever a point when you were growing up that you were like, I'm going to be an art teacher?
I was a senior in high school when I realized what I actually wanted to do. I wasn't a young child. I've always had a huge passion for people and art. I've always wanted people to be able to create art. I remember I was in high school and a friend said, you should do what you're gifted with, what you love. In the end, you're going to be better at that than something you just choose to do it. I was like, what am I good at? What do I care about? Art. And I care about people. What better way to share my gift with the world than to teach it? And it crosses cultural boundaries with students that you may have not related to otherwise through art, through music. They're universal languages. No matter where you're from, how old you are, you can relate through art and music, and that's why it's so special.
So that kind of answers my next question as well. What made you want to be an art teacher?
Definitely. I think that I pretty much summed it up. But again, art can heal people in ways that most people don't realize, especially during this time of quarantine. People are relying on art, music, movies more than ever. And I think that's really special. You're seeing more of the gifts God has given people, more able to express yourself freely. Now that you're not tired, have more time on your hands, people are really getting to express themselves. So
I can look at art that I made in like 2011 when I was outside all the time and just super happy and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, man, that art was pure because it came from joy. Like, it was born of joy. And then look at art where I made in 2019. And I was like, man, this art is dark. And it's like, I love it for that, but it's because I was depressed and I was super sad. And like, so it's born of sadness, you know? And so I think it'll be cool in 5 years or so to look back at 2020 and see, man, like everyone was making art and it's all over the board because some people were responding to this because they're depressed and stuck at home. Some people are doing things that they love to do that never got to, and so they're happy about it. You know, things like that. It'll be cool for time to tell. The Great Awakening of 2020.
Sadness, anger, and depression drive me more than happiness. They make me want to create more, and I don't know why that is. Everything I've really ever created that I enjoy has been out of a dark place. It's therapy to create it, to get it out, to put it on display for the world to see. And they don't even have to know what it's about, but you know what it's about. So that's why it's important.
I don't think anything that's ever been said on the show has resonated with me more than that, honestly. Because like, if you listen to Bucky Ain't Listening start to finish, I would challenge anyone to find one happy thing on that entire CD. All of those songs were written at the darkest point my life had seen yet. And I'll say that to anybody, to a fault. I'm too transparent sometimes. The one thing I wanted to do most during that time was make music. Someone else said this, and I think it also holds true. Whenever you're doing something you don't want to do, you realize what you do want to do. So like, whenever I was there in that situation, it was very apparent. I want to go home and I want to write a banger of a song tonight because today was sucked.
When I went to basic training for the Army, I've never wanted to like go to church more. I've never wanted to worship God more. Like, I wrote down like songs, because you can't listen to music, and I just wrote down all the worship songs that I could remember all the lyrics to. And every night I would read my Bible and I would do this and do that. And I think it's because, you know, they say just pray when you're sad, pray when you're happy too. Of course, you hear songs about being happy, but the songs that really touch me are the ones that are written about sadness. So like, when I'm sad, that's when I want to pray, and that's when I want to create. Of course, we should do things in joy too. It's just a lot more difficult because we want to be doing other things that, you know, are distracting. So
last week, Nick and Heather and I all had a long discussion on how does faith faith play into our art. And so I think it's cool that our emotions and our faith can kind of blur together. I don't think it's so like black and white as we have our art, we have our faith, and that's that. I think that they are two edges of the same sword.
I agree.
So this is probably the most important question I'll ask you, at least for me, and I'm really curious to see what your answer is. But what is something that you think every artist should know that you wish someone would have told you earlier on?
Do not compare yourself to other artists. Do not compare yourself to other people. I remember in college, I was a good painter. I was good at printmaking. I was good at ceramics. I was good at drawing. My true passion has really always been painting. I had this boyfriend in college, and he was the painting guy. Like, everybody was like, oh, he's the best painter in the world. And I was constantly comparing myself to him. Like, so it drove me away from painting for a long time because I didn't want to be compared to him. I didn't want people comparing me to him constantly, his art. So I started doing ceramics, photography, and printmaking. And I was really good at that. And I was like, this is my thing. But really, it was never my thing. I just did it because I didn't want to be compared to someone else. So painting is still my favorite thing. I know I'm good at it. I don't really care if anyone compares me to someone else because it's definitely okay to create art other people don't like or don't understand. That is really what I wish someone would have told me. If I could go back and tell myself, just keep pushing. It doesn't matter.
Don't hold yourself to the standard of other people because you're not them. Key as well. And kind of what you said, art is subjective. So other people may like it or may hate it one way or the other. If you like it, that's all that matters. On that same token, like I find myself as a writer comparing myself to guys like Jonathan Nolan, who is writing a 3 TV series long script. And I'm trying to write a 3-minute song and have the same depth and intensity. Your art forms, yeah, they're similar, but you can't compare them because they're not the same. Comparing myself to guys like Chris Stapleton or John Mayer, they got like 25 years on you, dude. They're older and they've been around longer. They're different. They function differently. They have different peers around them. So like, we're not all going to be the Chris Stapletons, but also we don't all have to be Emily Dickens. Wait until we die in order to become something great. Would you agree with all that?
Yes, absolutely. You're talking about John Mayer and Chris Stapleton. Well, at least you're comparing yourself to some really great people rather than, some mediocre artist. I think they're both two of the greatest artists of our generation. So
though we shouldn't compare ourselves to other artists, that does not to say that we can't learn from them and learn from their work ethic and their techniques. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you. It's been such a pleasure to talk about faith and art and, all the things that surround our entirely subjective art forms to discuss and have some discourse about it.
Yeah, it's been great.
Hi guys, and welcome to this segment of yArtistry. Tiffany Perry came back, and so we're going to go over some of her art pieces that she has shared with us and discuss, why did she do them the way she did them. And so this first piece we're going to discuss is called Polmo, and it's a ceramic piece. Is that correct?
Yes.
So go ahead and tell us about this piece.
So with Polmo, the idea behind it was I talked to you about how I create better when I'm depressed or sad. And there was a time in my life where, I kid you not, almost every relative that I they had some type of ailment or disease. And my grandmother had lung cancer, and she since passed away from lung cancer. But at the time, she was just newly re-diagnosed. She had it before. I was just so mad, and I was just wanted again to create. So I threw the piece on the wheel first, the bottom part and then I threw a cylinder. I took a wire cutting tool and I just ran it in and out of the sides. And because it kind of represented the bronchial tubes to me in the lungs, the cutting away of the ceramic body was like the cutting away or the taking away of or destroying the body. So that's why I kind of created the piece the way I did. And then I fired it with some high fire glaze that I created. I made that glaze myself. That piece was for my grandmother at the time. Don't have it anymore, but it was a really personal piece for me.
I freaking love that. It's so cool to me when someone else shares you their art and you look at it and you're like, especially with abstract art, this is really cool. For me, I was like, how does she get those little fine, thin pieces in there to not break whenever she fired it? Like, I don't know how ceramics work. And then to you, you're like, this is about lung cancer and this is about losing my grandma. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much more depth packed into it that first meets the eye. That's beautiful.
When I was creating those pieces, though, everybody wanted to buy them. At the time, they were really personal to me.
Sure.
No, this is no. But then I've sold it since then. So Yeah.
We were kind of talking about this earlier in via text message, but like for me as an artist, I long for the day that people want to buy my songs. Not my music on iTunes, but go do that. Shameless plug. But I long for the day that people want to buy songs that I've written and then make them famous, like as a songwriter. But on the other side of that, I've always wondered, will I be able to? Is there a dollar amount that I can put on my art where I'm like okay with someone else getting the credit for it? Because songwriters, John Prine just passed away. Looking at some of the stuff that he did, like I had no idea. But he was just this moving force of songwriting. For as famous as he wasn't as famous as he should have been, if that makes sense.
Right. He did a lot of amazing things and people don't know about it,
Sure. So let's talk about this next piece that you sent to us. This is called Ciliate. Go ahead and tell us about it.
So ciliates are organisms. So I just kind of, when I started studying cancers and different things, I was finding more organisms that would come up and I'm like, that's beautiful. What is that? And it's crazy to think that like cancer is beautiful, but it's really a pretty intricate and interesting looking thing under a microscope. So I found a ciliate. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And so I kind of wanted to experiment with line work and different line and shading techniques. And it's an intaglio print. What that means is it is on metal, copper specifically. You put asphaltum over it, which is, thinking asphalt. And then you use a stylus to kind of carve out the areas you want. And then you submerge it into an acid bath. And then you rinse it, and then depending on how long you leave it or how long you don't, and then you remove the asphaltum, and you can run it through a printing press. So it's a labor of love, much like ceramics. The same thing with any areas that are shaded on there. It's where the asphaltum has been removed and submerged again for a longer period of time, so it has a little bit of graininess, giving it the look of shading. So you just put it in acid a little bit longer to get that effect.
That is unreal. Because like at first glance, I thought you penciled all of this. I had no idea that like this was so intensive.
Pretty neat.
One thing I thought was interesting is like the level of detail in this piece, the little hairs that kind of stem off from everything.
When I'm describing these, I had a reference, but of course with like microscopic images, they don't really have any definite lines or definite value. So you have to kind of create that. Yes, I used them as reference, but ultimately I had to come up with a lot of the line work and the value work on them because it's not there. It's not there. How can I show this in art when there's no definite way to do it? So you have to kind of improvise on those types of things.
I didn't even consider that, but like most microscopes, you wouldn't be able to see a lot of the intricate details that are on here. That's incredible. So like maybe this is what they actually look like and we have no idea.
Hey.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. It's been such a pleasure to have someone with your wisdom grace our web show. So
Never heard someone say that before. That's nice. Thanks.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you want to order a commission from Mrs. Tiffany Perry, I'll leave her email in the description below. Go support her. Also, tell me what you thought of the iTry segment today. It's something new for me. Again, iTry is trying to get me out of my comfort zone and maybe even try and knock some things off my bucket list eventually. So please let me know in the comments section what you thought about that. I didn't say this in the original cut of the video, so I'm adding it in now lazily. But the original plan was once things got rolling with this web show to post bi-weekly. And then if that got going all right, to post things weekly. That's going to be at a standstill because we're thinking about rebranding. We're not really sure that iHardly and this concept of I hardly know what I'm doing and the spontaneity of that is true to what we're trying to accomplish with the web show, and that is art. We want the focus to be speaking with other artists, getting down to the nitty-gritty of why make art, seeing the world through the lens of other artists, and also on an underlying level promote my art as well as a musician. So the next time you watch this show, it may be something completely different. And regardless of what happens, I'm going to keep the first 2 episodes up because I think the things that Tiffany and Nick and Heather Sherman say are all great things for artists to hear, and I would never take those down for something as silly as rebranding. However, if you're looking for new content from me while we're deciding what direction the web show is going to head into, you can check out One Take Tuesdays, where I literally do a one take of a song that I wrote or a song that I'm covering and upload it online. So the link for that's in the description below.
cut that out for sure.